right. See, we're at 10:30. We'll call the meeting to order. Holly, if you'd assist with the roll call of board members, please.
Okay. Andy Buffington. Wendy Hess. Bridget Edson. Mindy Benson.
Here.
Michelle Bischoff.
Present.
Curtis Woughton.
Present.
David Neff.
Here.
Daniel Schaefer.
Here.
Dan Fank.
Here.
Jason Schlutenhofer. Angela Klauser.
Present.
Oh, Angela's on. Haley Nichols. Cindy Hike. Peter Huffman.
Here.
Trace Kendig. Patrick Updike.
Here.
Blake DeRushi.
Here.
Annette Dunn. We have 10. I don't.
Okay, thanks.
Holly, this is Chris. I have 12 looking at the attendance list, so we may have some board members here that have audio issues. I know Kurt had an issue with audio that he's working on. So, and I see that a few board members signed on after the initial roll call. So, Mr. Chair, go through board introductions and we'll tally up the names here afterwards. But it appears that we have 12 on, which would be a quorum.
Who are the additional two that we have, Chris?
I have Patrick Updike, Kurt Woughton, Dan Fank, Peter Huffman, Mindy Benson, Dan Schaefer, Michelle Bischoff, Heath Hove, Blake DeRushi, Dave Ness, Angie Klauser, and Bridget Edson.
Hi, Chris. Steve Heil joined from Motorola as well.
All right, folks. Holly, if you would again go through the board members. We've taken the roll call and just introduce one by one those that were present and have them introduce who they're with, their representation on the board. Thank you.
Okay. So Andy Buffington and Wendy Hess are not on. Bridget Edson.
Bridget Edson present for EMS.
Mindy Benson.
I'm here.
And Mindy, who are you with?
Sorry, Tama County Emergency Management and Emergency Management for Iowa.
Super. Thank you.
Michelle Bischoff.
Yes, I'm Michelle Bischoff. I represent the Iowa Pro Chiefs and work for the city of Des Moines.
Curtis Woughton.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm with Blacksburg Volunteer Fire Department down in Blacksburg, representing volunteer firefighters.
And David Ness.
Municipal Police from Des Moines.
Daniel Schaefer.
Municipal Police from Denison, Iowa.
Dan Fank.
Sheriff's Office, Worth County Sheriff's Office.
And Jason Schlutenhofer. I don't think he's on. Angela Klauser.
Angela Klauser, member at large for Panorama Community Schools.
And Haley Nichols, Cindy Hike are both not on. Peter Huffman.
Peter Huffman, Department of Transportation.
Trace Kendig. I thought I saw him on here.
Sorry, my mute wouldn't come off. This is Trace Kendig. I'm on for Iowa DNR.
Okay. Patrick Updike.
Patrick Updike, Iowa Department of Correction.
And Blake DeRushi.
Blake DeRushi with Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management. I'm the 911 Program Manager.
So we do have a quorum.
And I think there was an opportunity for Iowa DPS. Heath, were you on? You want to introduce yourself?
Heath Hove, Iowa Department of Public Safety, Communications Bureau.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved, Huffman.
A second?
Second.
Bischoff will second.
Second, Derucci.
Huffman, DeRucci, Michelle, we'll get you next time. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, we've got a item on the agenda today for nominating the board chair. As everybody's aware, we lost to.
Are we going to approve the minutes?
Oh, thank you. Got ahead of myself.
You're all good.
Entertain a motion for that. Michelle, you have it.
Bischoff will move.
Thank you. And a second for the meeting minutes.
Wharton, second.
Wotan, I hear you come through. Any further discussion? Meeting minutes from October 18th.
Did we really meet on the 18th? That's a Sunday.
Patrick is suggesting a correction.
Yeah, I believe
That's my bad.
the 8th, Patrick.
Pardon me?
I believe that's supposed to say the 8th.
If there are no other substantive changes, Michelle and Curtis, would you support amending the minutes to reflect October 8th and then allow the motions to stand?
Yes.
Wharton, yes.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, as I started to explain, the item 7, board chair, was vacated here a few weeks ago with the retirement of Lieutenant Lampy. I will entertain a nomination from the board to fill the chair for the remainder of the term, which I believe expires in January 2022. So roughly a year to go in this in this term. I'll entertain a motion.
Bischoff would nominate Ness.
Huffman would second.
All right. Further discussions or further nominations? Hearing none. All in favor of Ness moving from vice chair to chair, signify by saying aye.
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 All right, and I think that'll create a vacancy at the vice chair position, which again will need to be filled through January of 22. I'll entertain a motion for that position.
Bischoff will nominate Hoffman.
Peter, are you willing to serve in that capacity?
I would accept the nomination.
All right, is there a second?
Wharton will second.
I heard a couple. Let's I couldn't make out the name. Wotan was one of them, I believe. So we have a Bischoff and a Wotan nomination for Huffman to serve as vice chair. Any further discussion or further nominations? Hearing none, signify approval by saying aye.
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 And any opposed, say nay. All right, the motion's carried. Thank you for your confidence. We've made tremendous strides under Lieutenant Lampy's leadership and all the volunteer board members, to be sure, both those serving today and those that came before. So we will try to keep the ship moving in the right direction and always moving forward. SWIC report.
Yes.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. We'll take a different look today and kind of look very broadly on the national level to start off my report. I am on several committees within the National Council of SWICs and co-chair the joint SAFECOM NICSWIC Tech Policy Committee, and also serve on several P25 groups. And there's recently been a flood of documents that have been published that may be of interest to the board and the board stakeholders. First of all, there is an updated statement of P25 user needs document that's now available. Previously, a user-defined document was created called the P25 Statement of Requirements that outlined what stakeholders wanted their P25 radios and systems to do. That document was reaching the end of its useful life, given the advances in technology. And that document has now been updated on several levels, and it has been it has even been modified in name to say P25 user needs, to get away from this concept of necessarily just defining features and functions, but also getting into what we actually need out of our equipment, which kind of takes it a little bit broader to say, you know, hey, regardless of what feature sets are in the radios, this is somewhat of the desired operation that we hope to get from these devices. So that document was recently published. It is available for download off of the CISA website. And it is a fairly long read, but it is a fairly good read if you want to get a sense of what the industry is asking for along with the stakeholders. The second document that was recently published is called Operational Practices for Encryption Key Management. This went through one of the committees that I co-chair, and it gets into some of the ins and outs and complexities of encryption key management that agencies that are utilizing encryption should probably be aware of. This document complements the recent encryption training we've had over the past couple of months very nicely, and that document is available from the Federal Partnership of Interoperable Communications website. If you don't want to dig around on that website to find it, I can send you a link directly to it. If you like, just get in touch with me. The last document is one that the agents or the committee that I co-chair wrote. It's called Public Safety Communications Dependencies on Non-Agency Infrastructure and Services. And this document really takes a deep dive into some of the finer aspects when agencies use non-governmental or non-agency owned systems. It starts talking about how if you are contracting services with a vendor or a provider, what's in their continuing operations plan. If they have dependencies in that plan, that's something that would serve you to be aware of and to make sure that they're appropriately accounted for. It discusses also various components of the life of a contract, from the initial inception, where you're accepting proposals, to the implementation of that contract, to the conclusion of that contract, and what that vendor may or may not do with your data once everything is all done. So those are three documents that were all published within the last couple of months that will have potentially some useful information for stakeholders here in Iowa, so I wanted to make everybody aware of those. Looking a little bit more locally, we still do have those two STR deployments out there in Atkins and Clinton. We've been working with them pretty closely on any necessary troubleshooting that may have to happen with those vehicles. Anytime you have a deployment, there's always some weird stuff that can pop up, and we've been actively working to curtail any issues that arrive with that. Even more mundane things such as maintenance on the generators and coordinating with specific individuals that need to handle things like finance, billing, and reimbursement. So that work continues on. And for anybody that may need to utilize one of our STRs, please keep in mind that the East and West STRs are deployed in those respective communities until further notice. As always, I'm working very closely with the various committees under the board and keeping them appraised of feedback and comments that we've received, especially when it comes to the two policies that were most recently out for public comment. You may remember them from the air-to-ground policy and also our LTE deployable policy. Both were out for comments. We received comments on both, and we're currently in the process of educating those comments now. With respect to the LTE deployable policy, we're going to work with some industry personnel to make that policy a little bit better. Chair Updike can cover that a little bit further on, but I've had some ongoing discussions with them regarding the potential modifications to that document. Also had a lot of work recently over the past month, again, with agencies that are looking to join Isicsb. Some of these needed some expedited assistance, and I was able to help them get everything in line in a very short order so that they could get access. Thinking in terms of training now, shifting gears a little bit, we're also working with ICTAP and CIS and Jim Lundstedt very closely on delivering the next round of TAs for us. I see Jim Lundstedt on, and he'll probably be able to cover some of the virtual aspects that they will cover or be working towards as well. Local training continues. I've helped train a couple of agencies recently, actually several over the past month. Some of that was virtual and some of that was in person, and I'll just remind anybody here that the board and DPS and myself will work to accommodate whatever you may need from your training. Helping out with the training committee videos as well. We'll probably have an update for that later on. And then, of course, finally with status board, we did have some scheduled downtime over the past month as some maintenance had to be done on DPS servers. Notice was sent out to users in advance to let them know of any potential disruptions. But overall, things seem to have gone fairly smoothly with those updates. From what I understand, some of the server updates were fairly significant, and downtime was minimized. In addition to that, we've had some non-Iowa agencies express interest in status board as well. So I'm talking to them to try to see if there's a way we can develop a larger scale partnership so that it's beneficial for us, it's beneficial for them, and potentially even a way to enhance the program going forward. We still also have agencies that may need some training. If you're one of them or you know of some, let them know that we're still offering that training. We can typically knock that out in 30 to 60 minutes. So that is my report, Mr. Chair. I will go ahead and take any questions.
The training you're referencing there toward the end is specific to the status board?
Correct. Correct. And a lot of times when we do that training, it is kind of done under the auspices of we're not only training users, but we may also be training the trainer. So we kind of take that approach to make sure that the end users and those that may be in administrative roles have the understanding of the program so that if they have to train a new dispatcher, they're able to do that.
Super. Thanks. Any other questions for the SWIC? All right. 911 Council report. Mr. DeRucci.
All right, thank you. At the council meeting earlier today, we did cover a lot of territory. The recording is actually already even posted on the council's YouTube page. So if I don't touch on something that you might be interested in or you want it a little bit more in depth, I would encourage you to go and watch that recording. In summary, a couple of the keynote items. About a year ago, we briefed that text to 911 transfers were available statewide, with the notable exception being transfers to the DPS PSAPs. So happy to announce that within the last month, we have been able to get that also implemented at the DPS PSAPs. So the details on how to transfer, I don't know, are necessarily critical to this particular meeting, but I can either get those to you offline or, like I said, watch the council video. But now text to 911 transfers are truly available statewide to include those DPS PSAPs. Also, just as a reminder, the 911 strategic plan that covers the next 5 years is available for public comment. That's available on our Homeland Security website on the 911 page. So that Google form is available for public comment. At this point, we only have one comment filed, so we'd certainly like a whole lot more feedback, and that is available through December 1st. We also spent a good amount of time talking about and receiving a presentation from the kind of ad hoc training committee that the council stood up. If you remember, and you probably don't at this point, but at the March 911 council meeting, there was kind of an introduction to that committee's findings And then, of course, COVID happened, so we kind of reconvened on that topic and had a presentation. We will also be getting that report out as well as the slides. So if there's any feedback on that kind of telecommunicator training topic that you're interested in, that is out there as well. And like I said, discussed in depth during the 911 Council meeting today. Finally, and most timely, there was a good amount of discussion and update provided on the Verizon 911 and regular voice communication degradation that was experienced in Iowa last night. It ended up being about a 4-hour issue. Had a couple calls today to sort through what happened and what could be done better. I have a call with Verizon, have a question into the FCC about notification or lack thereof. We did work with DPS to get a teletype message out to the state PSAPs. If you're not familiar with what happened, there was an issue reported intermittently on Verizon cell phones where a caller would only have one-way voice communication, so could not hear the caller on the other line. That impacted both regular cellular calls as well as calls to 911. It admittedly took a while to get a grasp on the scope of that issue, not knowing if it was limited to Iowa, if it was limited to a certain part of Iowa, or if it was more nationwide. So again, some of that is what I'm attempting to clean up throughout the day. I did send out a notification this morning to PSAPs that had been cleared. About 2300 last night, everything was restored. It ended up being a fiber cut that impacted about 300 towers, but still the notification and the time spent trying to figure out impacts were more than it should have been. So trying to sort through some of those things today. And again, for those in the 911 business, I will be sending out kind of updates as I have them or as things develop and become a little bit more clear. Certainly like to thank Swick Myers as well as DPS for helping sort through some of that late last night. So appreciate it, and more to follow on that. Pending any questions, that concludes my brief.
Thank you. Any questions for Blake? Hearing none, we'll move on to the user group committee. Vice Chair Dennert.
Yeah, Chair Ness, I think Mr. Dennert had to sign off, so I can go ahead and cover that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so the user group committee met last month, normal scheduled meeting, discussed what was going on in the RICS, and also went over some of the user applications. They have been reviewed by Motorola for loading, and they have all come back favorably. There's 5 of them: Fayette County EMA, Henry County MedForce, which is an air ambulance service based out of eastern Iowa and northwestern Illinois that covers eastern Iowa, Madison County, and the Sac County Sheriff's Office. All of those applications were reviewed and found to be appropriate and have been moved on to the board under new business for approval later on in the meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for the UGC? All right, Chris, keep rolling with the finance report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met last month. On the topic of discussion was some of the various expenditures that have been discussed recently and had to be covered related to the SDR trailers. There's some maintenance that had to be done on the central trailer, which included some mechanical work on the drive components, such as the wheel bearings, brakes, things like that, and general service. Also discussed was a little bit of the work that had to be done to the ones that are currently deployed in those bills and things associated with that. As of today, I'm going to pull the document up so everybody can see the document that covers our finances. As of today, we have spent right around $17,000 and $17,857.21 in fiscal year 2021. Of those last month, I believe, where's that? They're here somewhere, but the funds available are $238,700.04. SLIGP, the documents posted there as well. Currently, so far in this fiscal year, we've spent $9,105.18 of federal money, and our 20% match is $2,276.30. So overall, the SLIGP 2.0 grant is going to be coming to a conclusion as well. So we've got some of our calls scheduled with NTIA related to activities specific to that, and we will update the board as needed. Does anybody have any questions on the current financial status of the board?
That's a lot of numbers, Chris. Again, thank you for posting it beforehand along with the agenda. That's helpful to be able to review that before the meeting. All right, Governance Committee, Chair Huffman.
Okay, the Governance Committee met earlier this month. We discussed about these developments in the air-to-ground channel policy, but again, have no business to act on for that. We also discussed developments in the deployable policy and where that's going, but again, have nothing to act on. And we also discussed something we'll hear about later in this meeting, which is a proposed research project that's seeking a letter of support regarding a rural broadband research project proposal going to the National Science Foundation from Iowa State University. But again, we'll hear about that later. And that's it.
Any questions for governance? Thank you, Peter. Operations Committee, Chair Bischoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The Operations Committee has met several times, and our topics of conversation are to expand the itinerant channels. Currently, there are 3, and working with the RPC, there are potentially 9 more available in the 700, and then a mirroring of that in the 800. The RPC is working through some changes and to make those 800 available, and we're discussing the viability of having Isicsb request those channels and then make them available to everyone in the state. According to the RPC plan, this seems to be the best plan moving forward, and that's what we discussed and are continuing to discuss. We have drafted a visor guide. This is kind of a step 1 in moving toward a user guide, a field user guide. It's something that we can develop now while we're waiting for a decision on the TA that we've requested to get a electronic version of a field guide for everyone to use. Continue to work through the memorialization of talk group names. This work is happening in coordination with standards, and have had some discussions regarding a programming guide as well, and how that might look and what kind of precautions we need to have in place with such a document. So that's the activity of operations for the last month. I'd entertain any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Chris, we're back to you for outreach.
Yeah, I suppose we are. And I'll throw out a reminder if anybody wants to jump on the outreach committee to help us figure out ways to not only let everybody know what the board and its committees are up to, but also to potentially attract additional membership. Please let me know. We'd love to have you. The outreach committee has sent out the new newsletter as of today. There had to be some extra work to go into the newsletter because of Chair Lampy's retirement and departure from the board, in addition to everything else that's going on. So that newsletter did go out this morning. Holly did a fantastic job on it once again. And we do have some success stories in there, including STR deployment, kind of a summary of the deployments in both Atkins and in Clinton. The one thing that I will say, too, is that the outreach committee will likely have a little bit of work to do in letting everybody know about when the next round of regional Isicsb trainings happen. And we'll be able to get those in the newsletter as well, so everybody has awareness of it. That's the report from the outreach committee. Take any questions?
Hearing none, we'll move on to the training committee. Vice Chair Broudus.
Okay, I don't know if Rhonda was able to make it today. I can cover that as well, Mr. Chair.
Super, thank you.
Yes. So the training committee met last month working on finalizing the pursuit module. We had a volunteer, Amber Jennings from Montgomery County, to record an audio track for that training module. We're in the final stages of getting that posted, so that's been good progress overall. As far as some other work that was ongoing, discussion of TA requests was had. Specifically, the current status of the program that's provided by CISA, our abilities to perhaps do some state-sponsored training or what would be required for that. Then also additional modules and things like that to work on related to the ISIC standards. Since all of our TA requests do come through the training committee, they also discussed a couple of TAs that are provided by CISA that would assist the board in developing an Iowa Field Operations Guide. That work is still in progress, and we hope to have something concrete for the December meeting on some action items from those items that came up in November. Go ahead and take any questions.
Thank you. Technology Committee, Chair Updike.
Thank you. And Technology Committee met only on October 22nd. I'll kind of just give you an abbreviated version here. We're reviewing some of the standards and policies that are already out there. The policy that we're looking at or reviewing is the Isicsb 12B policy, which dictates what happens to the ICS 217A form. We haven't really accomplished anything with it, but it is under review, partly because of the potential of listing interoperable talk groups on that page and whether that happens or not. The standards review is all related to, what is it, 1.5.2 and 1.5.0 as it relates to the air-to-ground channels. So we'll keep digging into that. Did participate in the RPC meeting, and some of those things have already been discussed by Chair Bischoff. So we're kind of getting involved with multiple things all at once, but those are the primary things that we're looking at. And also, we will be getting back into the LTE deployable policy. There was some additional comments during the comment period from CTIA and some of the concerns that they had. I don't know, Chris, if you want to expand upon that because you were more involved with it, but what the technology committee is planning on doing is taking those additional comments and implementing it or working through it as that LTE policy evolves. Chris, you want to?
Yeah, I can certainly cover that. So I got an email from CTIA, which they are a group that represents some of the major carriers that would serve Iowa, including U.S. Cellular, Verizon, T-Mobile, /Sprint, and AT&T. And they had some questions about that draft policy. I had a couple of phone conversations with representatives from CTIA and a couple of the carriers as well to see what some of their initial concerns were and how best to address them and work through it. And had a nice discussion with CTIA on a couple of occasions and let them know, hey, if you can give us some constructive comments, we can easily work with those. And as we work to adjudicate any comments that come in, we can let you be a part of that process as well. So they went ahead and submitted some comments, I believe, on the 9th, which was the last day that policy was open for comment. And I've since had a conversation with CTIA on their comments to get some additional context and clarification. And I think we're on a road that will hopefully have this before the board for approval sometime in January or February. So we're going to work with them directly along with the carriers as much as possible to make sure that the policy is agreeable for everybody. But again, the bulk of that policy is really focused around trying to prevent harmful interference with foreign equipment coming in as much as possible. I've had a chance to speak to some colleagues from neighboring states about some issues they've had with foreign equipment coming in and resulting in interference. And it ranges from, hampered LMR or LTE connectivity or connections all the way to something like a bomb sniffing robot stopping in its tracks because interference was experienced by that device with the signal that basically tells it what to do. So that's the type of stuff we'd like to avoid. And it's often easier to front load some of the work with that. And then at that point, once everybody understands what everybody has, we'll be able to go through with those deployments with a higher level of confidence that everybody will be successful with their component of their mission and what they're trying to accomplish. So in the end, we're going to work with them very closely on that, and I see nothing but good things coming from that. So I'll pass that back to you, Chair Updike.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Nothing else other than agenda item 20. We'll be getting into the VCall 10 document that's in section E. So other than that, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions for the Technology Committee? Hearing none, we'll move on to FirstNet Broadband. Chair Bischoff.
Thank you, Chair. The FirstNet Broadband Committee did meet this week. It was just a general meeting, general updates on standing practices. We did receive notification that there will be a change in our contact with the FirstNet Authority. Kyle is no longer going to be our contact, and Kevin, I'm sorry, I don't have Kevin's last name. Chris, do you have Kevin's last name?
I believe it is Nines, right?
It's night.
Okay. At any rate, I know that there's in the newsletter, there's information regarding that, and I'm sure I'm sure Kyle will provide some information when he provides his update if he's on today. But that's the news from FirstNet Broadband. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you for the report. LEA Committee with Chair Stufflebeam. Connie, are you on?
I am on. This month, I am able to report that all the LEA channels have been successfully migrated to the new system. All the LEA announcements as prescribed were done, and they're no longer being made. Training has been done with all the PSAPs. There has been testing with all the PSAPs of the delivered and installed control stations. As far as the committee knows, there have been no contrary reports or any concerns about this migration. Therefore, I have the privilege to report that the committee's scope has been successfully fulfilled. Lastly, I would like to, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to participate in this project. I also want to thank my entire committee for all the efforts to migrate the LEA channels to the new system and bring this migration to a successful conclusion that will improve not only public safety, but also officer safety throughout the state. Are there any questions?
Connie, this is Dave, and that's a tremendous report. That was a area of significant concern when people first started to hear that LEA was going away. The committee quickly came up with a strategy, a plan, involved various stakeholders and made notifications ad nauseum, perhaps. So people are, I'm sure, pleased that those notices or announcements are now done. But great work by the committee. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if by chance you have a roster and you want to throw out the names so we can say thanks and appreciate their service, that'd be fine.
I do, and that would include Sheriff Rob Broder, Adam Arnold, Jason Barnes, Michelle Bischoff, Brad Burke, Rod Dennert, Luke Ipperling, Ray Geringer, Kenny Ora, Keith Hove, Chris Myers, Doug McCaslin, Christine Rathmeyer, Scott Richardson, Chad Roberts, Corey Truckee, Steve Tucker, Paul Vermeer, Deborah Bitko, and Wally Walter. That was my committee.
Great. Thanks again for your and Rob's leadership of the committee and for everyone's participation with this important initiative.
Chair Ness?
Yes.
I would make the motion that this committee has fulfilled their mission and therefore should be dissolved.
Sounds good. Is there a second for that?
Wotton, second.
I heard Curtis Wotton. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And with that, I would like to thank Chair Steffelbeam and Co-Chair Rotter for their leadership of that committee. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you for allowing us the privilege.
All right, on to other reports. Information sharing between board members. I can start by officially welcoming Sergeant Hove, who's been appointed by DPS to serve on the committee. And he will also be, according to the commissioner, in an interim basis, filling Lieutenant Lampy's roles as relate to the DPS communication centers, statewide interoperability, and Iowa's Amber Alert program. Not performed by him at this point is the system administrator role of Isicsb, and that, for the time being, as had been forecasted before his departure, is being still fulfilled during this transition by Lieutenant Lampy, who is working on a contract basis for the time being while they go through the selection process, as I understand, of the next system administrator. Now, Heath, that's my understanding of things. I would welcome you and encourage you to correct any misunderstandings or misstatements that I may have made there. Sergeant Hove?
Sergeant Hove just took another phone call real quick, and he'll be back in just about 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that sounds good. I think that information's accurate. It was read from a email from the commissioner, so just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. I think the information was also shared to police chiefs and ISSDA. Any additional conversation or information sharing between board members?
Mr. Chair, this is Chris.
Yes.
Long term, on the topic of the system admin, an item that will likely be added to the agenda in the coming months will be an update from whoever may be playing the role of system administrator. It would include things like network performance, things of the sort. So that will likely be coming to the agenda here very soon. And then that way the board members and interested stakeholders can have awareness and ideas of how the system is performing.
Excellent. Thank you. Any additional information sharing between board members? We're hearing some background. If people that are not intending to speak to the group could mute their microphone, that would be great. And we'll move on to the Motorola Project Manager. Do we have someone from Motorola?
This is Steve Pyle from Motorola. Backfilling or replacing Melvin Mercado, and nothing to report at this time.
Well, thank you for joining us. I've heard positive things, and we're excited that we've reached the stage where Melvin has moved along. Not that we wish to see him leave, but that's a positive thing for the progress of the system. And we hear great things about your background coming from Illinois. Do you want to just give a brief summary of what brings you here, Steve?
Sure. So currently I'm the Regional Services Manager for Motorola. Iowa is one of the states that I support. Prior to that role, I was the Service Delivery Manager, System Administrator for the Starcom 21 State of Illinois system. I did that for 5 to 6 years prior to that, basically running the state system for Motorola. 32-year Motorola, a lot of engineering experience, a lot of business experience. So looking forward to working with everybody.
Excellent. Welcome again. Thank you. David Barnett, did I see that you're on the call for FirstNet?
Yes, sir, Chair Ness, you did see that. I am here. During the month of October, we added 5 small cell node sites in the Des Moines metro area. Those locations for those small cell sites are Easton Boulevard and Hubble Avenue, East University Avenue at East 29th Street, East University Avenue at Pennsylvania Avenue, Waukee at 98th and Chalk Street, and the last one in Des Moines, Hubble Avenue near Capitol Heights. So again, 5 small cell node sites added in Des Moines metro area to help with the coverage. The next thing I'd like to inform the committee of is we have a plan that has been put together by the engineering team for hardened site generators starting next year in 2021. And that is in response to what happened with the ratio. So our plan currently is in 2021, we will do 113 generators to start. 19 of those will be done in Q1, 50 in Q2, 37 in Q3, and 7 in Q4. Again, that'll be 113 that will be done in 2021. And we also have some projections that we will be doing for 2022. I do have a Excel spreadsheet that has all the locations. I'm going to be meeting with Chair Bischoff and Swick Myers to go over that, and anyone that would like to be involved from the Isicsb board committee, if you're wanting to see these locations, or if you would like to provide any input on site that you think might have a higher priority than maybe some of the ones we're initially starting with, would love to be able to get that feedback from you. We have not determined a meeting time yet to go over the generator sites. I would say we'll probably do it within the next couple of weeks. But again, anyone that would like to be involved in that conversation, please reach out to me and I will notify you when we will get ready to have that meeting. That is all I have, and we'll entertain any questions at this time.
Chair Bischoff, if people are unfamiliar with how to reach Mr. Barnett, would you be willing to help facilitate that meeting if there are board members that seek to participate or provide input?
Absolutely.
And David, thank you. And David, I assume in a big picture, the generators will provide additional runtime in the event of power outage.
Yes, sir. That is correct. So in the event that the batteries have exhausted their power, the generators will kick in and be able to keep the site powered for weeks instead of hours.
Super. Well, that is some quick response to the lessons learned, so appreciate that update. Any additional questions for FirstNet AT&T? Hearing none, we'll move on to CISA with Jim Lundstedt.
Good morning, Vice Chair Ness. Is the audio okay here for the brief?
Very good, thank you.
Okay. We'll make this quick. I will expand briefly on Swickmeyer's mention about virtual training. The Emergency Communications Division, working with FEMA, delivered a pilot version of the All Hazards Communications Unit Leader, or COML, course to a small cadre of students in the District of Columbia last month. This was our first attempt to transition a in-person course to virtual instruction. We used a product called WebEx Training and limited class size to about 15 students. That was outcome of really needing to be hard engaged with the instructors. We realized that in a virtual environment, it's hard to hold your attention. So we also backed the hourly instruction down to 6 hours per day, meaning that 33-hour class now is a full 5-day course. Required 4 instructors plus a supervisory person who is helping with lessons learned to conduct the class. So it will be a big lift for us once we are finally able to get this off the ground. We hope to deliver the first actual requested course early in 2021, and I'm working with Swift Myers on a request to repurpose an in-person COML class to be a virtual delivery later in, I believe, March. At this time, we are also attempting to revise the curriculum so that we can conduct the Incident Communications Center Manager, Incident Tactical Dispatcher, Incident Radio Operator, and Auxiliary Communications course via virtual delivery. These won't be a real quick turnaround, but we do have a project plan in mind and are working as quickly as we can to get that done. As soon as we complete a review of the COML course, lessons learned, we'll turn that around for delivery to states and territories as quickly as we can. One item of interest, perhaps, for those on the call, Tracy Bearden mentioned during the 911 council meeting that she was able to complete calls last night when we were in the compromised or limited outage situation with Verizon by using GETS. Said that was a successful workaround and essential to conduct her effort to do outreach. So a reminder that GETS and WPS are available and no cost option other than to manage who has the service in your agency. Feel free to reach out to me if you would like more information. Finally, just a quick update with the elections behind us. We have seen a considerable uptick in the threats from ransomware, particularly pointed at the healthcare sector. Information has been shared through the fusion center networks, the joint terrorism task forces, and so forth. But reminder that the vectors for being affected by ransomware are often an individual, but an email or an SMS message compromise that gets into a system, and heightened vigilance as always. in the cyber world is essential. I believe that's all I have at this time, Vice Chair Ness, unless you have questions for me.
No, just once again, thanks to your and CISA and Emergency Communications Division, additional or great information that's shared through Isicsb. Really appreciate your continued involvement and partnership and sharing the information and helping to facilitate much needed training. So thank you. All right, on to the Standards Working Group.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Standards Group met last month and continued to work on some standards related to VHF infrastructure being hung up on an Isicsb site. Waiting to reach out to some external groups to get some clarification on a few things with that. And also continued the discussions of contracted EMS access to the system. Still working on some finer components of that. Hopefully we'll have some good pathways going forward. In addition to that, though, in some requests from governance, operations, both committees, we do have some requests for some update to some standards such as 1.5.0, 1.5.2, 4.8.0, an update to 1.10.0, and the creation of a standard for the naming of interop talk groups that would be created by the board. That would be a new standard, 3.2.1, and that work will be undertaken relatively soon. So we do have a full plate of stuff coming up. One other item was also to include some additional information in standard 4.2.0. So the standards working group will be fairly busy over the next several months, and we hope to have some updates for that.
Yes, sounds like you'll be busy indeed. Thank you to you and the Standards Working Group. All right, old business, sub-regional talk groups. Michelle, do you have anything?
I do not have anything to report directly about that other than Des Moines is moving forward with coming online. Our police department is online, and our fire department will be going live December 1. And I know that the other two PSAPs are working to get their equipment deployed. Polk County is nearly completed, and I believe Westcom's just getting started. So as soon as everyone has their equipment, we'll be able to use the system more widely and have concrete examples to report back on the success of the sub-regional talk groups.
Super, thank you. Control station update, Swick Myers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing really new to add this month. From what I understand, our quarterly report was accepted. I haven't heard anything back regarding that. Still working on some of the finer aspects of the inventory to make sure it's agreeable to everybody, and just tidying up some work with respect to that. I would expect that there'll be minimal information to share going forward. Can certainly keep this on the agenda, but the only really outstanding thing we have to do at this point would be to finish the inventory and then close the grant out and button up any other work that may need to be done, which is relatively minor at this point.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions about the control stations? Hearing none, we'll move on to air-to-ground policy update. Patrick, is that you with technology? Or Chris?
Not.
It's kind of a blend of operations and technology. So, Michelle, if you want to take it, I can, or if not...
I'm completely good with you talking.
Okay. So, work is ongoing to include some comments from a local sheriff's office that submitted some feedback on the request for some guidance or clarity on what that policy would mean, and perhaps a priority of resources that could be used. For example, would you always want to use the air-to-ground channels, or in some cases would it be better to use a regional TAC to get that enhanced coverage and expanded operational areas so that in-field personnel could communicate with the air ambulance as it's on its way, and things of the sort. So it is likely that an update to standard 1.5.2, which covers the air ambulance landing zone coordination standard, and that updated standard and that policy will likely go through the board at approximately the same time. It seems like there's some agreement on the type of hierarchy for use of those channels and talk groups that aligns very well with the user comments. So that work will be coming forward here, hopefully within the next month and a half or so.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you for that report. Anything on the LTE deployable policy? I think this may have been technology with Mr. Updike.
Yeah, nothing really much more to add from what was mentioned earlier, other than once we get the the wording and all of that adjusted to technology, we'll bring it back and then push it out for public comment period again. So not much more to add to that.
Okay. Thank you. And the VCall 10 document.
Okay, so if Chris can pull that up, thanks. A while back, we presented this to the board. It's a recommendation for the use of VCall 10 as a possible interoperability channel, conventional channel for the local agencies to deploy. There was some input from operations and their members that it came off appearing too geared towards just public safety answering points, and so we modified the wording. And if you read through that, you'll see those those words have been changed to be a little bit more inviting for those people who are in the whole realm of public safety and fire and EMS, etc. So the only thing we kind of overlooked was there's still some reference to PSAP within that document. But by the same token, the reader needs to remember this is just a recommendation that they implement the use of this frequency at their location, especially for those agencies that are VHF only. The possibilities for implementing this for an interoperability channel with a VHF only user, and even if you are an Isicsb user, the recommendation is also that they could implement this. As you read through it, you kind of see the history. You see that anybody that would want to use this would have to go through the coordination and frequency licensing process. So it's probably not 100% that you would get it, but it's not 100% that you wouldn't either. So unless the board has any angst with some of that wording that's right at the top of that document, I would make a motion that the board go ahead and accept this recommendation as written.
Bischoff will second that motion.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
On to new Isicsb user approval. And if Chair Dennert, I haven't seen that he's come back on, so Meyer, will you be presenting, and then we'll need a motion from somebody on the board.
Certainly, I can cover that, Mr. Chair. Before you today are 5 applicants that have made their way through loading analysis by Motorola. All have come back fine. In addition to the review of the user group committee, we have before the board today that requires board action. Fayette County EMA as a level 1 user, Henry County, they are updating their access to Isicsb to include level 3 for core connected dispatch consoles. MedForce is an air ambulance service based out of the eastern part of the state. They're working on updating all their radios to TDMA to accommodate the Isicsb network, and they plan on using it for level 2 purposes for picking up of patients and transporting them to medical facilities during an emergency. Madison County is updating their application to a level 3 as well. They're tying in dispatch consoles. And the Sac County Sheriff's Office is updating their application to level 3 as well for core connected consoles. I cannot make a motion to approve these users, but we can probably open up the floor for that.
I'll move to approve. This is Huffman.
Thank you.
I think I heard a Huffman and a Bischoff. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? Mr. Myers, would you be willing, we have some relatively new board members, to briefly describe the difference between the 1, 2, and 3 levels?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Level 1 is access to Isicsb, and what that does is that gets the using agency or a collection of agencies access to the regional and statewide interoperability talk groups on Isicsb. Essentially, then at that point, they have the ability to use the regionals and statewides to help their operations, especially when dealing with outside agencies. At that point, they would have access to more or less everything on that interoperable fleet map. So regardless of whether they were operating in their home area or perhaps hundreds of miles away from home, depending on where they're located in the state and where they may be going, they have a way to communicate with other agencies. Level 2 is where they have access to all of the interoperability talk groups, but then also some talk groups that they own, manage, and control. This is a situation where they may say, hey, we want some talk groups for everyday use for our own operations. They may want some backup access to Isicsb for operations in case their primary system goes down, or a combination of things. Included with level 2 access is the ability to have a statewide roaming talk group that if personnel are out on a transport or traveling for official agency business, it gives them a direct line back to their home communication center without having to dial through administration lines. Those talk groups, they own, manage, and control. They decide who gets them and how they get them, and they have the ability to basically let everybody know, hey, these are ours. If you want them, talk to us, and then we'll say it's okay, and then we'll coordinate with the system administrator and other groups to make sure that happens. So they have the ability to ask for more talk groups or add for more radios with any application. So that's what comes with level 2. Level 3 is kind of a blend of level 1 and level 2 in the sense that they have access to all the interoperability talk groups. They have their own operational talk groups, but at this point, they're tying in a core connected dispatch console. So they're tying right into the system core. It gives them access to a few extra feature sets that the system can bring. And it also allows them to have more direct connection to Isicsb for all sorts of things, such as bringing in talk groups later on and things like that. It expedites that process slightly. Level 4 is where agencies have said they're going to use it operationally, and they may want to add additional tower sites to enhance local portable coverage to help facilitate successful communications throughout the daily operations and completion of their mission. As an example, Des Moines PD is a level 4 user, along with the Des Moines Fire, Carroll County, Iowa, Union County, Iowa, the Westcom system. They've all added infrastructure or been a part of that project. So level 1 is interop. Level 2 is where you start getting into potential daily operations. 3 is a core connected dispatch console, or in some cases, adding a channel to support additional capacity. And then level 4 is adding sites to the network.
Excellent summation. Thank you. Next on new business is Rural Broadband Research Project. And Peter, is this what you referenced, I believe?
Yes, it is. And Professor Zhang had to teach a class, but I said I would teach the cover for him How this came about is he contacted me as part of the DOT because he saw some towers that would be handy for a research project that he's trying to get paid for. It's a proposal to the National Science Foundation in the final round of grant proposals. Which means it's just between Iowa State University and Nebraska for who's going to get this grant. And being that the DOT is enthusiastic about rural broadband and has been working with the OCIO, or the Office of the Chief Information Officer, and working with the governor's office in trying to find ways to enhance and enable rural broadband in Iowa, this seemed like a really good collaboration. But the towers he was looking at were Isicsb towers. So I said, look, he needs to really bring this to the Isicsb board. And right now, he's in a phase where he's really looking for a letter of support. And so that's a part of the research proposal where it basically says, talked to us, so we have resources, supposing that he meets the stipulations we have for things like non-interference and not being a non-commercial entity and all of those things, following our rules and regulations and policies and obviously Iowa code, that we would give him the same consideration for things like co-location on those towers. If I think I need permission to share a screen. Who's got that?
Peter, I will go ahead and give you presentation authorization. So here it comes.
Thank you. If you prepared a short presentation, I will try to do my best with that. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
That's great. Thank you. Professor Zhang has worked with the Department of Defense in the past, sort of for, and I read some paper. It was interesting about the sensor network systems, and a lot of that turned into the kind of communications that we, small network communications we now think of as the Internet of Things. So he's been a technology pioneer for some time and has done plenty of work with government agencies before. He's worked on this wireless network 3D vision for public safety, worked on connected vehicles and emergency responses, and right now they've got and are developing a small cellular network for the purpose of smart agriculture, and there's more of that later in this presentation. There are a lot of reasons why we're trying to improve rural broadband. Right now, one of the most, the biggest ones that I felt should be pointed out was education. There's so many people who are trying to do distance learning right now, and especially our grade school students, and they're struggling. And we've got kids in rural areas who are being told they're supposed to try to connect, right, and learn with Zoom meetings and video streams, and they don't have broadband. So it's a huge hurdle that these kids are trying to face, and enhancing our rural broadband capabilities, in particular in Iowa, would I think be an enormous boon to that. There's also definitely benefits to public safety, transportation, agriculture, and telehealth. In terms of public safety, obviously we've got voice data, augmented reality. I'm not sure how much of that we're using in Iowa right now, but even the technologies we have now are limited in rural areas because we simply don't have the data transfer rates necessary to capitalize on available technology. And that's true not just of local sheriffs and local police departments who live in sparsely populated areas, but also the state agencies who find themselves driving out to those areas and lose some of their ability to communicate. They have a number of things they've worked on in terms of wireless-based communication to help coordinate traffic. I'm sure you can imagine what this would be like when we get situations like game days for college football, when the traffic turns into a huge mess, and we really need coordination, or during accidents, sort of live, rapid communication between vehicles and help guiding people can certainly reduce accidents. Looking a little further on to the future, and again, this really appeals to the DOT, is ways in which we can economize and help save fuel through different networked vehicles. Right? And that's sort of looking pretty far into the future, but a part of that will necessarily be having available broadband to transfer that sort of data wherever you happen to be, and like long stretches of highway where there aren't towns necessarily nearby. So there are a lot of, if we look at sort of the throughput, so how much data you need to transfer versus latency, in other words, how long it takes to transfer that. And latency is backwards, so on the left it's long latency, on the right it's short latency. There are a lot of different types of things. For example, well, things, so this might be like sensors that don't need immediate data response. It's just like data collection sort of things. And then on the other end, we have mixed reality, which needs, this would be like augmented reality, overlays, things like that, where you need a lot of data and it needs to happen right now. Then you've got system control, and this has more to do with some of the like controlled farming, things of that nature. And then high throughput, long latency like video. And well, here's some examples for things, crop nitrate sensing. You can put some sensors on leaves and then just collect that data over time, and that can help them decide when and where to fertilize. In terms of, and I'm not sure how well this animation will play over, but there's animal herding using autonomous aerial vehicles, so drones, right? And there you need pretty immediate feedback, but it can be really handy because now you can suddenly see where all of the cows are and tell where the little vehicles are. Likewise, there's in terms of control systems, and for those of you who know, I worked at John Deere for a while, and the things like the autonomous tractors and the immediate feedback from sensors to figure out how well like harvesting is going, those are all really important things, and they're just going to grow and get bigger. But again, the data throughput is a very limiting factor that they have to deal with. And video for things like just watching watching crops grow, but in this case, they can use that to look at characteristics of the plants and phenotype them to tell whether or not they're growing the way they're supposed to be. And you know, that's a case where you need a fair throughput, but it doesn't matter if you get it, 10 seconds after it happens or an hour after it happens. That's a very slow kind of thing. So we have all these different types of data collection, but all of them, or at least many of them, really rely on just high-speed data transfer. If we look at things like this VR field trip, there you definitely need high data rate, right? So education is again, a really critical point there. There are a lot of different projects that require high-speed internet. I think we can all appreciate that. And they're very real. When it comes to things like the system control for farming applications, that's something that will always be rural, right? We can't fix that by moving the farm to the city. So having that broadband internet is really going to be beneficial. and then tons of learning applications. And again, I think especially now we all realize how important that can be. So right now they're constructing this wireless living lab. They've already got some deployment going on. They've got their portable infrastructure. They've got some towers they've already attached to, like the ag engineering, agronomy, and biosensory research farms. So this is all like active stuff that's going on right now, but on a small scale, right? It's still at an early stage in the research. And then just around Ames, they've got a wide variety of things attached to buildings and towers to build out this test infrastructure. Right. So what they want to do now is start expanding that, and that's what the second phase of the research is. So I think right, there are lots of applications: ag equipment, crop and live farms, cameras, ground vehicles, sensing. I'll move past a lot of this because it's just reiterating it. Right. There's some technical details that you may not need. He's a professor, you know, he gets excited. So today's status, it's built on their current open source wireless deployment. So they've got pieces of what it's going to be built into currently existing. They've gotten a $1 million investment from the National Science Foundation so far, or maybe that's what they're going for. Oh, that was the SciNet. And the ARA so far has gotten the $300,000 investment from the National Science Foundation. And if they beat Nebraska and win the grants, they'll be that's $18 million coming to Iowa State University to basically build out this platform a little bit and test it and do the research for possible technologies that could be used for rural broadband. So what he's seeking, long term, ultimately, they would like to co-locate some equipment on some of the Isicsb wireless towers, of course, meeting with the stipulations Isicsb has, and I've discussed those with him involving our governance rules and the technology rules, in particular interoperability, like intermodulation interference, anything like that. He would also like probably somebody to take part in discussing with him, like, what are our public safety needs, what are our initiatives, and like it to be really a collaborative thing where we're expressing the needs of the state of Iowa from the standpoint of Isicsb, and so he can help develop his technology in a way that best suits the needs of the state. So then after that program, obviously we go into, it would be a new technology and very exciting. And it's basically just another stepping stone in the way things are going. And there's, I guess this was just, a statement that Iowa has been a leader in computing technology in the past, and this really is a really great opportunity for Iowa to be a leader in developing a new technology for rural broadband, which is an undermet market. So that's his presentation. He's drafted a letter of support, and it's a non-legally binding argument. It's not very, it doesn't promise very specific things. But what it does is it goes into the proposal packet that he'll send to the National Science Foundation that says, hey, look, he's been seeking out these resources and he's working with the state of Iowa, and if he meets our stipulations, then we'd be willing to work with him in the same capacity that we'd work with any other state agency who wants to co-locate or something like that. So then what the ask is that the board signs the letter of support, which I can distribute via email. Are there any questions about that hopefully maybe I can answer some of?
Peter, this is Patrick. Is this like a standalone 5G network of sorts?
They're looking at a variety of different possible technologies. Some of it would be more like backhaul stuff. So yeah, I think he's made reference to something he calls cableless fiber, which is basically it uses laser like a fiber optic, except instead of going through cable, it goes through air. Right? And they've gotten good results, apparently going up to 10 miles with that, even in odd weather conditions, although that's another thing that has to be tested. Otherwise, I think less about exactly which frequencies are used, but how they're connected. So some of the things are, with the possibility of making each node also a hub. Right. So instead of just wireless going out to a farm, that farm would also be able to receive and serve wireless to an adjacent farm or something like that. I don't know all of the technical details of it, but they are looking at a variety of technologies and ways to help get broadband to areas that are hard to reach, either directly wirelessly or that it's very costly to get cabling out to.
This is Dave, and while I'm not on the tech committee, or that's not my area of expertise, I certainly recognized even in 2019 the value of rural broadband, and certainly the pandemic has brought those challenges ever more to the public eye. In addition to the sheriff's office, the EMS, and public health associated with pandemic and other emergency response, seems like a great way that Isicsb could help facilitate and benefit from such a grant. So unless others have concern, I guess I would encourage Peter to submit or to forward the letter of support to the board. And do we have a time frame? Are you hoping for action today, or is it something that we...
It needs to move pretty quickly because I think the part of the decision phase is happening later this month or early next month. So it is something we, if we want.
Are you comfortable with the language in the letter? The rest of us haven't seen it yet, so are you?
I'm pretty comfortable. I worked with him to modify it to, for example, explicitly state that it must meet our stipulations in terms of non-interference and our policies. Just making sure the language didn't make any claims that we weren't making, but also that we recognize that it could be an enormous benefit to us in a number of ways. But I would certainly be more than happy to send it to the board.
We also have an attorney assigned as a liaison to the board. I guess unless there's a concern or reservation from other board members on the call, I would be comfortable allowing Peter to, with his judgment and support from the legal community, to move forward with a letter of support. That's one person's opinion. What do the rest of you think?
Hey, Chair, this is Blake.
Yes.
Just a quick question. Do we have any policies on this matter? And certainly this seems like a really good initiative, but just wondering about the precedent this could set for other types of projects that want to cohabitate. Is there any precedent, or do we have a policy that would addresses that?
We do, and Peter, that's why it started in governance. You want to touch on that briefly?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of policies set in place about co-location, but we have some precedents, especially for local agencies that are currently co-locating. And so, again, it requires, and I've discussed this with Professor Zhang, third-party intermodulation study. It requires structural analysis of the tower. It has to be stamped by a professional engineer. They've already been working with professional engineers for some of their earlier stuff. And I met with him at the Marshalltown Tower site, along with Scott Richardson from the Department of Public Safety, and met with their professional engineer, just looking at what kind of space was available and what exactly they would need. Yes, there is at least a precedent, although I don't know how much formal policy has actually been, I guess, approved and put into, I don't know, Patrick, do you recall? I know we were talking about co-location policy, but I don't remember if we ever actually got one pushed all the way through.
Well, there's been quite a few discussions about it. I can tell you some of the heartaches that I went through with some of this co-locate stuff, and I get it. I mean, I understand what's going on, and I can appreciate that, but I don't know if I would even want to be, I think there's a lot of things to tie up before you start saying that you're going to co-locate something like this or anything for that matter.
Oh yeah, this isn't a promise. It's not binding in any way. This is just, and if this and this and this and this, we would look into it. It's saying we don't ultimately.
Peter, this is Chris.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we don't have any policies necessarily covering the installation or co-location of broadband type equipment. Given that, this is kind of going to be dictated by somewhat of precedent. And Peter, I'm assuming in your discussions with Mr. Richardson from DPS that there was a discussion about, security and integrity of the radio equipment on the site within the hut and various precautions that would have to be taken to ensure that the network integrity is not compromised.
That's correct. Among other things, they won't have, direct access all the time. I think what we'd end up with is a situation where they'd have to be escorted by somebody who is a representative of Isicsb in some way, either from the DOT or the DPS, in order to do any of their work.
You've heard some concerns expressed, Peter, and you reminded us this is a letter of support for the seeking of the grant. Do you think there's an ability to hedge slightly? And I know we've addressed co-location in the past, and basically a letter that would say we're supportive of the application, and provided the co-location discussions, an agreement can be reached we would support it because it would benefit public safety, something along those lines. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing where, once this is a big if, right? So if the grant is given to the ARA group, then they would have to go through the whole process of applying, and then it would have to go through the technology committee, the governance committee, operations, whatever it needs to go through for approval. So no matter what we put in that letter, it still has to be approved by all the necessary subcommittees.
Blake or Michelle?
I was just going to express my support for moving forward with the letter because it is just a letter of support that, if all of the things that Peter has identified come to fruition, we would entertain the potential of having this equipment on our tower, saying that it passes all of the requirements that Peter outlined, load, interference, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that, whatever terms we come to as far as access, equipment in the hut, et cetera, still fall within the professor's ability to conduct the study. It seems like this is just basically, will you entertain the option of this happening? And I think we would. I think we have to. It's not a commercial endeavor. It's a research endeavor, and not for profit. I believe not for profit, as it's coming out of Iowa State. So I wouldn't suspect that there's profit associated with it at this point.
Correct.
I think it would be some. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say I've definitely had that commercial entity conversation with him. Is the technology they develop from this will one day probably be used by some for-profit company, but that is not what this piece. Just like the internet started off as a way to communicate between libraries at a university or whatever, and now it's a huge commercial thing. But that's not where it started. Right? So that's along the nature of what this is.
And Peter, this is Chris. I believe this project has had some level of endorsement from the governor's office as well. I think you did. Did you mention that previously?
I didn't mention that he had been speaking with their office. I just mentioned that it is in line with the governor's push to improve rural broadband access.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and this is Blake. Just to follow up on my earlier question, I have no issues at all on this. Like I said, I was just more kind of next steps or thinking ahead, but no issues at all on this.
But I do think you brought up some valid concerns, and I thought we were farther along in the in the process or the policy to allow such. I know we've had requests from public safety entities, so I would encourage Peter, as they work through the grant side of this, that we, as the Isicsb, continue to progress, or a standards working group, or wherever it comes from, the policies that would cover this type of request, whether it's coming from a local police, fire, EMA, whoever, because the requests will continue to advance, and we need to have a consistent and defensible method of fairly quickly responding to whether or not they meet our shared needs.
For sure, that makes sense.
With that, I'd entertain a motion for permitting Peter to draft a letter supporting the idea and the further conversation about co-locating if, in fact, the grant is awarded. Did somebody make that motion?
Wotan will make it.
Go ahead.
Wotan and Bischoff, once again. All right, any further discussion?
We get a roll call, please.
All right, Holly, would you do a roll call? We've got a motion and a second.
Bridget Edson. I think some people have dropped off too, so.
Yep.
Mindy Benson.
Yes.
Michelle Bischoff.
Yes.
Curtis Woughton.
Yes.
David Neff.
Yes.
Daniel Schaefer.
Yes.
Dan Fank.
Yes.
Angela Causer. Haley Nichols.
Yes.
Peter Huffman.
Abstain.
Trace Kendig. Patrick Updike.
Abstain.
And Blake Drushi.
Aye.
I think Sergeant Hove had joined us. I'm not sure if he's still on.
Chair Ness, yes, I am.
In favor or no?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Peter, for your leadership on that. Any public comment before the board? Public comment. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Huffman.
Huffman, and second?
Voting second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thanks, everybody.